So, guess what the talk's about? Sports on TV. For as long as sports has been on TV, there have been efforts to try to make it easier to watch. And this is, by the way, a much less substantial topic than the previous two talks, which are really cool and awesome. And this one's more about just like, hey, let's relax, enjoy ourselves for a little bit. So for as long as sports has been on TV, there are people trying to make it easier to watch or better for people at home. And one of the earliest examples of this was the 1970 World Cup, going back a while. The organizers of that World Cup realized that people watching at home on black and white television sets were having trouble watching the game because at the time they're using soccer balls that were yellow or other strange colors like that, which didn't really show up that well against a green field on a black and white television. So they came up with a new design for a soccer ball meant to try to make this ball more watchable, namely this one. If you ever played AOSO soccer, you've used this soccer ball, and it's from the 1970s World Cup. And it was so successful at increasing contrast and making the sport easier to watch that they used it for 1974 as well, and variations of this for the rest of the century. So, super successful. Right. I read this like years ago, and it stuck in my head the whole time, and I was like, when I was in this talk, I was like, I have to mention this. This is awesome. But there's only so much you can do by changing the equipment of the game to make it more watchable, right? So you can only change the soccer ball so many times to make it easier to watch on a TV. So the best example of television broadcasts trying to do their part to make things easier to watch, and sometimes failing, came in 1996. So at the time, Fox or Fox Sports, one of those two, had the broadcast rights for the NHL. And so they're trying to show hockey games, but there was a similar problem for them. Now in hockey, contrast isn't the problem. It's a black puck on white ice. You're going to see the puck just fine, except this is not what it looks like on the TV. It's a super small, super fast rubber puck flying around on a large rink. You're going to have a problem seeing it and seeing where it is on the screen, especially when it's bouncing around crazy. So Fox decided they want to make it easier to spot where the puck was. And so they had a couple options for this, but only a few would really work out. So they wanted to have some way to better make the puck look bigger. Now, you could make the puck like 4 times bigger, but that would kind of change the game a little bit, so that didn't really work out. So their idea was we had to figure out where the puck is on the screen and sort of highlight it, basically draw on the screen with a highlighter, so wherever the puck is. And the way to do that is you have to first figure out where on the screen the puck is. So you could try to say, like, okay, take a picture of the screen, analyze all the pixels, figure out where's the puck, and then highlight it, but that's kind of impossible with their tech, and especially with the resolution they had at the time. So what they decided instead was to actually embed infrared systems into every puck used in the game that would broadcast basically where it was. So they'd have sensors all around the rink that would figure out where the puck was on the ice, which is kind of crazy. And on top of that, they had to figure out, okay, so here's our camera. It's our one camera looking over the rink. Where's the camera? Where's it angling? What's the tilt and the pan and everything like that? Where's the zoom level? Using that, we'll do a bunch of trigonometry to figure out where's the puck on the screen at any one point in time. And then they did the bad part. They just like put a blue ring around it. A really bright blue ring that just kept flying around the screen. And better yet, if someone did a slapshot and went super fast, you get like a nice little red comet tail and flying across the screen to show you where the puck was. It did a great job of showing you where the puck was, but it was really annoying. And for longtime fans, those kind of patrons, like, you can't see the puck. Here's the puck. This is where the puck's going. Now, do you see the puck there? Oh, that's great. Pucks are great. So they got developed Glow Puck. And within 2 years, nobody wanted it around anymore. So Fox actually lost the broadcast rights for the NHL to ABC. And when ABC got it, they're like, we don't want Glow Puck. Thank you. No Glow Puck. So that was the end of Glow Puck. Best name ever, by the way, Glow Puck. It's like if Tron meant hockey. But the guys who made this tech were like, well, this is kind of cool. We did a bad job of showing it on the screen, but this is kind of cool. We can track where the puck is and highlight on the screen. That's kind of awesome. They were trying to figure out where else they could use this. So that team actually left Fox and formed a company called Sports Vision, which is still around today. And Sports Vision went to ESPN in 1988 and started a new project. And if you've ever watched football, like real American football, not that silly international football, you've seen what they did. It's the first down line. So when you're watching football, you can see the ball just fine. You can see the players and the field just fine, but you kind of sometimes lose the overall context of what's supposed to be happening. If you watch broadcasts like the early 60s or 70s or something like that, you'll see they have white text overlays of like, oh, it's 2nd and 7. What the hell does 2nd and 7 mean? It doesn't really make sense. You have to count up the little notches on the side of the field and memorize exactly where that ends up laying out or where the ball started from. It's hard to tell what the team's actually trying to accomplish. And so Sports Vision was like, well, wouldn't it be great if we effectively made it look like there's a whole new painted line on the field where the team was trying to get to, the first down line. Now, you're not going to have a crew after every play go out and paint a yellow line across the field, and when that play's over, they erase it over with green. That's not going to happen. So they wanted to instead make it look like there was a brand new line across the field. And at first, this kind of seems like a similar idea to the hockey situation, right? You're drawing something on the screen in a set place. But there's a few differences. A good ice hockey rink is flat, obviously. And you'd think a good football field would be flat, except it's not. It should be flat end to end, or else you have a really unfair playing field, but so end zone to end zone, it is flat. But if you look at it from the side, it's actually bowed slightly, so the sides of the field are actually lower than the center, which meant that they couldn't just pretend, oh, well, there's the corners, this is a giant flat plane, we'll just draw lines in the flat plane. They actually, Sports Division had to do 3D models of every stadium they wanted to use the 3D line in, so they can map out exactly where every piece of topological information was of this field, which is insane. On top of that, you're not panning a moving object anymore, so this is actually just static. It's going to move between plays maybe, but it's not flying around with a giant neon tail, it's just one line on the screen. Now, if you just wanted to take that 3D math and where the camera was and where it's aiming and figure out where to draw the line, that's pretty easy, but then you'd be blocking content. This guy right here would be underneath a giant yellow line, you can't see what's happening anymore. So that's not going to fly. So what they also have to do is figure out, okay, let's turn this into a giant green screen, where only the players, the ball, and the ref are on top of it. And so we only want to draw the line where it's the background. That sounds simple because, well, this is green, and green screens are green, so obviously it should be fine. Except if you've ever actually worked with a green screen, the best green screens are uniformly lit, uniform color, all that kind of stuff. And that is not at all what a football field is. A football field, even just the grass alone, can change color slightly over the course of the field, especially as play goes on and more dirt gets brought to the surface. Some football fields, including NFL stadiums, are built on baseball fields, so you have dirt all over the infield, because that makes sense. Then there's situations like, what if it's snowing, what if it's raining? The colors can change slightly, you have white stuff all over the field, it's crazy. You can also have teams like the Green Bay Packers who hate you and have green uniforms. That's not fun. So, this technically wasn't the hardest part of the job, but they had to map out all the possible colors and the colors of the uniforms and the colors of people, which hopefully are not green. And you map it all and you figure out, okay, well, in this area where we want to draw the line, which pixels are grass and which pixels are people? Don't color the people. And you have to do that at least 30 times a second because every frame is new. Every frame you have to draw all that sort of all the information, to figure out where the camera's pointing, all that kind of stuff. And they got it working. In fact, it was so successful, and people liked it so much, that Sports Vision won an Emmy for this, for what they brought in, which is kind of awesome. Slightly different reaction to Glow Puck. In fact, it was so popular that this became standard tech for every football broadcast. And Fox Sports came back on the picture and said, yeah, well, we don't like this because it costs $25,000 a game, which is kind of expensive. So they tried to cut it, and fans didn't like it. Fox Sports is not very good at this stuff. So they had to bring it back in. Over time, of course, the cost has gone down, but the point stands. By the way, also, green fields are not always green. Sometimes they're blue. Sometimes they're red. College teams, they like to be unique, little snowflakes. Nowadays, this has become so popular that it's not just the first down line anymore. It's the line of scrimmage, the first down line. It's what down is it, even though that's already up here. It's what's the play clock, even though that's already up here. They might as well just like name every player and all that kind of stuff. We also even have stuff like, hey, if you get to here, your kicker can make it because that's his longest kick was from right there. That kind of information, which is kind of cool. And if you're watching the game, it's kind of adding a new layer of context to how you're watching the game. So that's pretty sweet. Hold on a second, I'm trying to figure out the next thing is. So, you've seen two techs so far. Infrared and cameras. So basically, that was a purely optical system of football, and hockey was slightly optical, but mostly infrared and trigonometry based. Now other sports are starting to use the same kinds of technology. So one example you might have seen is Hawkeye, not the Marvel character, the tennis thing, whatever. So Hawkeye is a system that was initially meant to basically say, hey, we have a bunch of cameras, we can try to figure out where the tennis ball is. We can do the same kind of tech of like figuring out, by analyzing pixels, which pixel is the tennis ball and try to map out in 3D space where the tennis ball is at every point through its path. And to do this, they actually have 20 cameras on each of the courts that they want to have this tech for. They're all high-speed cameras, they're all synced up so all the frames are at the same time, and they're all in different angles, so you can put together, you can triangulate where the ball is at every single point along the path. And you can slowly build up an idea of, okay, where was the ball, where is it going to go, and when it lands, is it in or out? Because it's as good as linemen are in tennis for figuring out in or out, they sometimes get it wrong. And so in recent years, tennis has allowed for players to challenge certain calls and say, hey, did I really win that point or not? Which is a kind of neat way to change the game a little bit. Also, it's led to other things like analytics in terms of like, hey, is this player really good at playing at the net? Or is this player really good at forehand smashes? Now that you have like player tracking data, it's actually kind of cool what you can do with that. But for people watching at home, they can see exactly whether the ball was in or out. And they do this even when the player doesn't challenge. So you can see like, did the player mess up by not challenging and stuff like that. So it's a little more actual information instead of like squinting at the TV and being like, I think it hit, but that was like 3 pixels on the screen, so I don't know. So it's kind of interesting. And again, more and more sports are taking in stuff like this. So baseball, they are a sport that currently shows people at home whether a ball was actually a ball or a strike, because they can, again, map out exactly where the baseball was at different points. They can tell when it crossed the plane in the front of the plate, and where in 2D space it was, and what the actual strike zone for that batter is. So they can tell, hey, was that pitch actually a strike or a ball versus what did the umpire call? But baseball doesn't like technology, so the umpire is always right. So they don't actually change plays. If it was a strikeout when it wasn't a strikeout, yeah, too bad. So the hope is that one day the umpires will not be in charge of making these plays. You can actually just have a computer tell you balls and strikes. And it's so fast at this point that it could really realistically replace the umpires. They just kind of don't want to. But all kinds of sports are adding stuff like this. Mostly now these are all vision systems because we have high definition enough and fast enough cameras you could do these kinds of things. We're getting really good at recognizing from images what's happening. So if you watch golf, now instead of trying to find a tiny little fast white ball flying through light blue sky, it'll show you the path of the golf ball as it flies through. You can actually see what a slice is versus what everything else is, so that's kind of cool like that. And then, there's other overlay systems. And these are more just like for the Olympics and stuff like that. I'll show you, hey, you can't tell what that boat is, but that's actually Greece, and here's New Zealand, and here's different paces and stuff like that. Or here are the names, and when they finish, their name will come up faster, so you can actually see like, oh, well, those 2 guys touched the board at almost the same time, who actually won. It'll immediately show you the results like that. Kind of superfluous, but a little bit cool. And there's stuff like this, where they'll actually show you, hey, we know what the record time was for this event, and we know what the distances are, we know what the camera is, all that kind of stuff. We can show you, hey, if you want to actually break the world record, you have to stay in pace with this line. This is the average speed for that person, or in some cases maybe the exact speed of that person at that point during that race. And so they can show you, hey, this is Michael Phelps, at his record. If you want to beat him, stay in front of this line. Now, for people at home, they can see when like a swimmer's at that pace are slowly falling away. The swimmer has no idea. So actually people at home are like, why are you falling slower? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why are you slowing down? And the swimmer's like, I don't know where I am. Like, I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what the record is. So it's kind of cool to watch it like that. And there's all kinds of things like this that are changing how sports is broadcast. And in some cases, thankfully, changing how sports is actually called in terms of making the correct call on the field. Stuff like that, which I think is really fascinating, and it's getting more and more prevalent over time, so I think it's pretty cool. And that's basically it. So.
How do you think access to all that data is affecting players themselves when they see the data and like how they kind of change their behaviors based on it?
Right, so there's been 2 separate movements that are kind of related to this. So neither which I got into here. One is stuff like in the NBA, they now have full player tracking data. So for every game in the last 2 or 3 years, they've actually kept track of exactly where every defender is, every offensive player is, where the ball is, what passes are happening, all that kind of stuff. And they can quantify everything. They have things like, they can quantify shot quality. So how good was this shot? Like, did you make a good decision? Like, how close is the first defender, second defender, their angle, their velocities, your jump height, your release height, all that kind of stuff. So they can figure out like, hey, Steph Curry takes kind of good shots, and then he makes all of them. So he's a really good shooter. Chris Paul takes a bunch of hard shots, makes a ton of them, so he does better than you expect, but he's making bad decisions for what to shoot. Stuff like that. So you can start to get little influences like that from there. And beyond that, there's also the analytics movement, which is like, hey, you shoot 40% from three-pointers and 50% from two-pointers. Do the math, 50% from three-pointers, or 40% on three-pointers is more efficient than 50% on two-pointers. Take more three-pointers. But there are actually some teams that overdo it, like the Rockets this year. Not to get too much into details. The Rockets were like, oh man, three-pointers are great, let's shoot three-pointers. They don't have any good three-point shooters. So they've been just throwing up three-point shots, being like, it's more efficient. One of the guys went like 30 shots in a row without making one. That's not more efficient than anything. So there are some limits to where this is actually being applied properly. But all like basic math and also really advanced data from these kinds of computer systems are helping to sort of shape how the game is played, which is kind of cool. And there's all kinds of weird stats now. Instead of like being like, oh, how many assists did a player get? You can be like, how well did this player's passes set up that player to shoot? Like, what was the shot quality of people he passed to? As in, like, did he put them in really open shots, or did he like make them shoot over 3 guys? We can actually quantify that stuff now, which is kind of cool. So,
if we're trying to make the players just play more more and more optimally, why not just replace them with robots?
If you've watched any videos of Boston Dynamics, we suck at robots. Humanoid robots are really bad right now. If you want them to pour you coffee on the field, that'll work really well. But aside from that, if you want to build a car on the field, like the Detroit Lions want to just build cars on the field, that'll work. Not optimal for football. We're getting there.
So in terms of like the technology decision on using high speed, high definition camera versus implanting something into the ball,
Right.
Like what was the why?
So there's two examples of sports that have either tried it or are considering it. So the example I gave here was that the NHL was like, well, we in 1996 they didn't exactly have, massive coverage of super high speed, super high definition cameras. Even if they did, it might not be optimal to try to guess from there where the puck is, just because it might get obscured. When you're trying to track specific small things like pucks, it might be easy to use a transmitter that can tell you exactly where it is. When you're just doing a more static thing like pace lines or first down lines, cameras will suffice. In the case of the tennis situation, I'm just guessing here, but probably the reason they didn't go with sensors is there's a lot of tennis balls, and if you have to fit all of them with sensors, and it might change how the balls react and all kind of stuff. With hockey, it's more like, well, it's a puck, it is rubber, but you're not going to really flex the puck that much. If you keep all the stuff in the center and it's the same weight, you're not really going to change how it performs. If you put sensors in a ping pong ball, you might cause problems, stuff like that.
Has there ever been ridiculous stuff done, like turning a ball into a firewall? Stuff like that.
That's mostly the normal memes on the internet, but I mean, you could absolutely do that. There's all kinds of things. So a lot of this stuff has to be like real-time animation stuff or real-time effects that you have prepackaged and stuff like that. ESPN is famous for going crazy with like, hey, we have the next week to talk about this game. Let's go crazy. And they'll just like draw lines across the field of like, hey, this player ran on this part of the field, which doesn't take anything, but you can say that. And be like, oh, Steph Curry's playing NBA Jam. He's shooting fireballs from half court. It's like, okay, that's great. Generally, I'm not going to see that. It's going to be Glowpop 2.0, and people aren't going to like that much if it's during the broadcast. But if you have like some small segment of the internet that wants to see it, they'll have their way to do it. Cool.
Yeah, I guess. Hello everyone, I'm Kerrick. So today I just wanted to give a small talk about something that interests me, like how your diet affects the environment. So I've been like vegetarian for like 5 years for environmental reasons because meat production tends to be more expensive than plant production. Kind of makes sense, right? You need to feed plants to animals to get meat out of them. So like if you eat the plants beforehand, it tends to be like less expensive overall, and agriculture like has a huge impact on the environment. So that affects. What happened?
What does it do? What the fuck?
Guys, stop quiz. How much did you learn?
Okay, cool.
Try clicking it once and see if it skips over.
What is it? Yeah, what is it doing? All right.
If it doesn't, I can just like.
Okay, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah. So it's just like it's about like how what you eat affects the actually, it was kind of inspired to do this by Owen. Because Owen, Owen went on like a no beef diet temporarily, and like I kind of reevaluated like basically if you look at it's actually more nuanced basically. Like certain meats are more environmentally like bad for the environment, and actually a lot of like certain plant products are also not very good for the environment either. Okay, so let's jump into this. This is kind of why it matters. Like agriculture accounts for 7.7% of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, which is huge on the scale of the United States. It's also 80% of our water use, and like over half the land in the United States is put to some agricultural purpose. So it has a huge impact on our environment. So let's talk about the cost of food. Okay, good. All right. So food, like obviously there are a lot of different impacts of food production on the environment. I'm going to focus on two main effects, which are greenhouse gas emissions, which come from kind of two sources. One is just like the general shipping things around, like shipping feed to farm, like to feedlots for cattle, shipping cattle to slaughterhouses, shipping fertilizer, whatever. And also, the second part of that is animals like will produce greenhouse gases, and also like when you grow plants, they will eliminate greenhouse gases through because they absorb carbon dioxide from the air. So a big example is like ruminants like cows produce a lot of methane, and methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. It has about 25 times the impact on a kilogram per kilogram basis that carbon dioxide does. Because basically cows burp a lot and they produce a lot of methane. One thing I'm not talking about, mainly because I didn't have time, is like if you look at things like wild caught fish, like what is the impact of that on like reducing biodiversity or like affecting populations of fish. Okay, so here's just a bunch of numbers. So these are, we're looking at the greenhouse gas emissions of various foods. This is per kilogram. So to produce a kilogram of these foods, how much carbon dioxide does it emit, essentially? And it's not just carbon dioxide, but other greenhouse gases like nitrogen dioxide and methane. And you can convert different greenhouse gases into carbon dioxide by just looking at, what you do is you look at how much global warming this will cause over the course of 100 years. And like I said, like methane is like a 25x factor. So 1 kilogram of methane causes about 25 times the impact of carbon dioxide. And so yeah, so you can see that like plants in general are pretty low in terms of their emissions, and really just like lamb and beef are like really high. So like if you eat a kilogram of lamb, that's like about 20 times as much carbon dioxide emissions as eating a kilogram of, say, tofu. Actually, one thing that surprised me as a vegetarian, cheese is kind of a lot worse than a lot of other vegetarian, like plant-based things, but eggs are not too bad. And chicken is actually a lot better for the environment than cheese is. So you can kind of like just go to these. This is per kilogram. One thing I didn't get a chance to do is compare like the nutritional content. So obviously like these are all, a lot of these are protein sources. I picked major vegetarian sources of proteins and also just major food crops like wheat, corn, and rice are the major, basically like the major sources of calories around the world. Eric?
Why is lamb so much better than beef?
I don't know. I don't really know. I haven't like drilled into that, but I think they're like
efficiency of like conversion of how much they consume to how much protein they
Yeah.
produce. That's like how they do fish as well, I think.
yeah.
You give them some amount of feed and they give you some amount of protein.
Right, yeah. Like
So,
I remember like I think like salmon is like a quarter as much input feed as like beef, for example.
there's great efficiency.
Yeah. And
I mean, the babies.
and there's a lot of like all these statistics I kind of try to simplify down, but there's like many different factors that go into this. For example, like grazing animals actually tend to use a lot more resources because they consume way, actually I guess in terms of water. So like grass-fed animals that just like graze around use a lot more water because they require a lot more feed because their feed is lower quality. Like grass is actually a lower quality feed than like engineered feeds that are like composites of like corn and soybeans and stuff. Okay, so water's a little more nuanced. I broke it down into like two different types of water usage. Water usage that kind of takes from our water reservoirs, and also included in this is water that's contaminated by like runoff. And so you can see like it's kind of all over the place. Like a lot of plant products actually exceed the water usage of in terms of taking out of like reservoirs, taking out of groundwater of animal products. So some of them are more efficient. Like a lot of the grains are like really efficient, and tofu is really efficient. I don't know. I somehow doubt this number, but it was in the gigantic. There's like an organization that publishes like 5 megabyte PDF or 5 megabyte Excel spreadsheets about like breaking this down and like whether or not it's like been boned or whether it's like the whole carcass or whether like the grain has been removed and like, or the bran has been removed. And so like there are lots of stats. I have like a sources doc you guys can pour over if you want to.
Are they funded by some soy company or something?
I actually don't.
Is this per unit?
It's per kilogram. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't. a minute that, but all this is per kilogram of production.
Okay.
So to produce a kilogram of this product, and it's generally like in the edible form, rather than like a, I don't know, like, I think like beef, like they only use about 40% of the animal, and like with pork it's like 55%, and chicken is like 55%. So this is after taking into account that factor. Yeah.
Is there any correlation between like protein content and how much water usage the foods have?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to dive into that, but like basically soy is actually a really good protein. So complete protein, like the best proteins are milk proteins, eggs, and soy. And beef and other types of animal-based protein are close behind, but they're often like deficient like tryptophan. So like you can basically like to evaluate the quality of protein, you can look at its amino acid profile, and basically, like I said, soy, eggs, milk, casein, and whey have the best profiles, and followed closely by animal proteins.
So, yeah, related to that, like if I remember reading correctly, you can't get all the amino acids you need from plant sources.
No, that's not true.
No?
Like so, soy has all the proteins you need, and also, really, actually, any plant will have all the proteins you need mostly, but like oftentimes they're not in high enough quantities to actually. You can't actually eat enough corn to get a complete amino acid profile.
Maybe.
But like if you, but if you pair corn with like other, like I think if you pair corn with like legumes or beans, you can they cancel each other out, or they balance each other out, so you can get the I don't know, Ariel would probably know like what's missing in corn. There's like a amino acid that corn is really low in, and I think beans have it. So it's possible to get like a complete amino acid profile by balancing things, or just eating soy. Like soy is already balanced.
I was just gonna say maybe you meant like vitamins or something. I heard there's like some vitamins for like vegan people that's like really.
So there's certain vitamins, like vitamin B12 is not present in like an ordinary vegan diet. So they have vegan sources of B12. You have to take supplements, and they make these supplements by I think like there are bacteria that will produce it, and they harvest it from the bacteria. And like one other thing, like omega-3s are not usually prevalent in vegetarian diet. Well, like so different types of omega-3s, and like the best types are usually only found in fish. But you can, but actually they're produced by algae, and you can buy supplements that are made by processing the algae and extracting the omega-3s from them. And so like I take like an omega-3 supplement. I actually have it in my bag.
That's good for your brain.
Yeah. But yeah, so like, so from this perspective, like it's kind of mixed bag. I threw almonds in late in the presentation, and almonds are actually really bad in terms of like, and again, this is like per kilogram, so like almonds have a lot of nutrient value, like they have a lot of really good fats in them, like a lot of really good like monounsaturated fats, but they take a huge amount of water, and that's part of the reason California is in a drought. So this is the other side of water usage. So this is like water that falls. So this is called green water. It's water that falls on the land and like isn't going to go into like a river or a reservoir or anything. It's water that basically like it would either be evaporated by a plant or just be like evaporated from the soil. But like so this is kind of like tied to the land that it. This is like rain. This is rainfall, and it's like kind of tied to the land that produces it. And like you can see that actually this is where a huge amount of water is used. But again, like this is not water that we could drink per se, because it would be evaporated anyway before it got to like a lake. But yeah, like so this is kind of more proportional to how much land the thing uses. So like you can see beef uses a huge amount of water per kilogram, like 14,000 liters, and that's 1 square kilometer of land will actually produce about 500 million liters. So this is not too much land, but it's still a lot. So this is like, so annually you look at 500 million liters out of a square kilometer of land. You guys can squint to these facts if you want to. And that boils down to like, if you look at only arable land, like basically each of us has about 6,800 liters of this green water that we can use per day per US citizen. Obviously this is like lower in other countries that have higher populations and lower amounts of arable land. So like eating like a quarter pound of beef is already like getting you pretty close, like over half of how much green water you can use. So it's like, yeah, like basically doing this at a global scale is not sustainable. Like we're lucky in the United States to have like a lot of land that's arable and like not we're not packed in like Japan or India. But this is not like sustainable on like a global scale, I think. Oh yeah, almonds are still really bad. Lentils are actually bad too, which surprised me. Like lentils are like a pretty good source of protein, but they use a lot of land.
Salmon's pretty good.
Yeah, salmon. I didn't really do this analysis for salmon because it's like farmed and like it's not. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Wait, so we wouldn't be able to use green water otherwise?
Yeah, it's like water that wouldn't be captured. Like it's water that would like if we replaced like it's basically water that's not being pulled out of the ground. So it's not like or not being pulled out of like a lake. So it's not. This isn't competing with like drinking water and water for other uses.
So
It's water that falls on the land as rain and doesn't go into and never like makes it into a stream.
right. So what's the point of like conserving it, for example?
Basically, we just have a limited supply of it. Like it's limited by how much land we have and how much like total rainfall falls in the United States. And so like it's just kind of like a fixed resource. And so it's important to look at. And basically, like I guess like the point of this is that it balances out in the United States, but like scale to world population. Like I'll go into this in a bit, but yeah, this diet doesn't. We don't have enough like arable land in the world to sustain the U.S. diet. Okay, everyone good? And the slide will be up afterwards if you guys want to look at these numbers. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about like what other diets look like worldwide. I think in the United States, the United States and Australia are kind of anomalies in how much meat they consume. There's definitely some consumption in Europe, and like I think Israel is also high up on the list. Argentina is really high on the list. They have obviously like a heritage of like beef production, and I knew a vegetarian Argentinian. He said it was like he was like alone. Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting map. It shows the per capita meat consumption. Obviously, more red is more meat. And the United States and Australia top the list. And like you can see, like large parts of Asia are around the middle. Like more impoverished areas, like it's interesting. Like more impoverished areas, like Africa and India, obviously eat less meat. Meat is kind of like a luxury item.
What's this normalized by?
This is just kilograms per year. You have to, so you can see the scale. If you look at the slides afterwards, there's a scale. But this is kilograms per person per year.
Oh, per person per year.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like.
So it's like normalized on population.
Yeah, it's normalized on population. Yeah.
Did you look at all like the number of calories per person though? Because I would think that Americans.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Americans eat a lot more. I think Americans eat like.
We might eat literally twice as much meat because we eat twice as much everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, Americans I think eat like 2,600, 2,800 calories a day on average. And actually the number before like food waste is like almost like 4,000 calories before you take into account like waste and like cooking stuff. Let's go to the next slide. I just wanted to like, oh man, this really isn't that big, but okay. So I wanted to look at this is like comparing the diets in a lot of developed countries. You can see like actually a lot of developed countries have a similar dietary profile. So these bars, this is beef, this is pork, this is chicken, and this is sheep or lamb, and this is number of kilograms per person per year. And as you can see, like USA is like you have like big bars for beef in a lot of places. Japan and the European Union in general are like use less beef. Sheep is really only popular in Australia and New Zealand. It's just kind of interesting to look at. But like I feel like a lot of like developed countries, well except Japan has a pretty low meat consumption, but in general like a lot of developed countries consume a lot of meat. You see it's like if you look at like more developing countries, these are kind of like up and coming countries. Like it tends to be, on the whole, like, okay, Brazil is probably an anomaly because they're next to Argentina, but on the whole, like, more developing countries, and this isn't even like Africa or anything, but they tend to eat less meat. I think that's because, again, like meat is a more expensive item to produce. It's more like a luxury food. And like pork is a lot more popular in China, again, because it's like more efficient at scale. Chicken is popular everywhere because chicken is like super easy to produce. Like something like, I don't know, like 58 trillion chickens per year or something are eaten by people. It's crazy. Like the scale of this stuff is like crazy. Like in the like billions and trillions of like tons of I was doing fact checking on like that on some of these figures, and it's astounding how much food people eat in general. The world's a good place. Anyway, I thought these are kind of interesting to look at. I'll throw these up. These will all be on my afterwards. So just like in conclusion, like agriculture has a big impact on the environment. Beef and lamb are among the most expensive things to produce, largely because like water and also methane emissions have a huge impact on the environment. And actually, like eggs are actually pretty good, and I might actually start eating like pork and chicken. I'm still debating that and because they're actually not as bad as actually some vegetarian sources of protein. And also just like culture affects diet. Like I feel like in the United States we're used to eating a lot of meat because we always have, and like especially like in I don't know like the 50s or like basically there was like the Great Depression, and then like after that we got wealthier again, and eating meat was seen as like a sign of status, and I think that's like kind of embedded in our culture, but it's not necessarily. It's not inherent to like the human diet. I don't know. I mean, like people probably eat meat mostly because it tastes good, but also because like it's part of our culture. Cool.
So I know most people, when they talk about finding substitutes or finding the right balance for a vegetarian diet, talk about proteins and vitamins. But what about like, I guess hormonal balances? Because I know a friend of a friend's kid, they just happened to eat a lot of tofu, and she's like this 11-year-old kid who started going her period because she ate so much tofu and it contains a lot of estrogen.
Yeah.
There's all these other like hormonal factors or like chemical factors in food. So is there just like a resource or a modified pyramid that will take into account all of these and not just about protein, which is the hot topic about vegetarianism doesn't have enough protein or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know, like a good, like there's a lot of information out on the internet. There's like this one site. There's one site I remember having a lot of like detailed facts. So I'll try to hunt that down. I don't remember the name of it. I'll get that to you. So they're like, I don't know. I feel like the jury's still out on. So like soy has certain compounds in it that are similar to estrogen, and like people think that it can have an impact on sexual development both in men and women. But like I think certain people are more sensitive to it or something. Or like basically they haven't really concluded anything about it, except like there are a lot of like isolated cases that could or could not be real.
There are a lot of hormones in meat.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of hormones in meat. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy stuff in meat too. Yeah.
So the other thing I found difficult about not eating meat is I miss the taste of it.
Yeah.
So what's like a good substitute?
There's one thing I wanted to. So there's this company called Beyond Meat that is basically engineering like really like analogs to meat that taste really close to the original thing. Actually, like I wanted to bring some in, but I just like didn't get around to it. But you should check out their products; they're pretty good. Like so you're probably missing like the meaty taste, like, and you can get that. It's like the umami taste, and like things we'll have that are like mushrooms, and you can just like add MSG to your food. MSG is actually not bad for you. Like that's a complete myth. It's not bad for you at all.
By the way, it's also an amino acid. It's a natural amino acid.
Yeah. John.
Is there anybody who would not recommend becoming a vegetarian?
Wait, any reason or any one?
Is there any is there any reason you would recommend somebody not become a vegetarian?
Mm-hmm.
Or are there specific like types of people that you would not recommend being a vegetarian if you need to?
I don't think so. Like a vegetarian diet can provide like everything you need. I think regardless if you have like certain health. I don't think any health condition would cause you to require like a diet involving meat. I know like cats can't digest. Like cats can't be omnivorous. and they can't be vegetarian. Like you can actually have like vegan dogs, but you can't have vegan cats because cats don't have the they're evolved to be carnivores and they don't have the enzymes to digest any sort of plant proteins. So yeah.
Is there evidence that the vegetarian movement actually has decreased like energy consumption rather than that meat just like going away?
I think right now no, because it's such a small fraction in the United States. It's like around like 2 to 4% or something. I forget. Like there are a lot of people who like follow kind of vegetarian principles but aren't completely vegetarian or like pescatarian or something like that. So yeah, right now. Yeah.
What do you think about potential lab-grown meats as like a compromise between animals and vegetables?
I know they're expensive now, but I have like I think it's a pretty cool technology and like could have a lot of potential. But wasn't the first like it was like a $250,000 hamburger or something?
I think they're down to like $8 a hamburger.
Okay, wow, that's actually really cool.
Which is now getting to the range of like reasonable.
Yeah.
They just
check
have
that out.
that meat exercise.
Right, yeah. That's what I heard. Like,
tasting like meat.
But like, it seems like it's a good compromise between like still getting to eat meat, still eating meat, and like without the environmental impacts and those things.
yeah. Like a lot of the processes that cause environmental impact like go away, like the digestive system of the cow and stuff like that. Yeah.
So we solve all like the resources that you need for agriculture. Does that solve all this? Like if you do like hydroponics or like those types of like water conservation systems.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What are you saying? Are you saying can you like
Does that solve it?
make this more efficient?
Yeah, because that makes everything more efficient, right? And then like this discussion.
Yeah, like
Cows still fart.
yeah, cows still fart. There's still just like a multiplier on like the amount of like you take plant material and you use it to feed animals. Like there's still a multiplier. Like the animals only produce like some fraction. Like they said like 1/10 in my biology textbook. Like each layer. I don't know if that's true. Like each layer of the like food chain has like 1/10 as much biomass or something as the previous layer. I don't know. Yeah, like I mean producing. It'd be really hard to do like hydroponics at scale. Like I said, we have like half the United States is just like land being used to produce crops or produce or like grazing or ranching or whatever.
Why stop at vegetarianism? Why not eat like algae instead?
Because it's kind of hard. It was hard for me to jump to a vegan diet. Like you end up
farther. Like why not just like
like
algae is.
I don't know. I think plants are pretty efficient. I guess I haven't really looked at like.
Well, it's like you're saying, like for instance, if you were to say that like vegetables are 10x more efficient to be created than meat, right?
Yeah.
And there's something that's like 10x more efficient than vegetables.
Yeah. I think
it's plant.
Yeah.
Algae is actually a vegetable.
I think there's kind of a limit. This is mostly also like all of this is kind of because we have a huge human population, and it's just like if you want to be able to feed as many people as are on the earth as will be on the earth in like 20 years, like I think more of the world will be maybe going vegetarian just because of like fundamental limits. We'll hit like a limit on how much the earth can produce. But yeah, I think ultimately like we need to stop like growing our population. Like,
yes.
Somehow, but I've like that's like an extremely hard problem to solve. Because we only have one Earth. Outer space. Mars is not the answer. Outer space is way too far away. Wait, Stefan, you have your hand up fast. Or go ahead, Stefan.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's like a lot of people ask, you know, what can I do to help the environment? Like I'm just like this one person among like millions of people.
Yeah.
This is like the one actionable thing you can do to like help the environment.
Yeah.
And it's just like a pure energy efficient thing. It's not just about CO2, it's also about the land, it's also about water.
Yeah.
It affects everything.
Yeah.
Honestly, like this is the one actionable thing that everyone can do to make things more efficient.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
But the second best thing is to limit someone else. You don't have to put full turbo too less.
Thank you, Stefan. I think you that you're
How has life changed for you since you've become a vegetarian?
like I was surprised at how much it didn't really affect things. Like most restaurants will have vegetarian options, and I mean sometimes like the vegetarian options aren't very good. Like like they'll just like I don't know, like one thing that annoys me is like they'll substitute like eggplants or like mushrooms for meat, and like those actually don't have any protein in them, and it's it makes the dish kind of unbalanced, and like I try to like keep my protein consumption high because like I work out and stuff. It's kind of protein avoid like diet or like meal.
Do you lift weights?
Yeah, I lift sometimes. I usually rock them.
How much time do you spend in the gym?
Not enough.
So how do you keep
Not enough.
How do you keep your protein consumption up?
I just like you don't have to worry about it too much, but like eggs are a good source of protein.
You're
No, I'm vegetarian. Yeah. And like I said, eggs are actually pretty efficient. And like soy, like it's usually like in a lot of the meals that are served to me at work. I'm lucky to work in an office that serves food. Yeah, just like it hasn't really been too hard. Yeah, just like look for things that have like soy and like maybe eggs.
That's fun. Have you tried soy?
Actually, I drink soy sometimes. Like I drink for breakfast sometimes. Have like the lowest subscription. So, yeah. Cool. Yeah. Any more questions over here?